So Invincible episode 7 is out and is straight fire. And we finally got to meet one of the most anticipated characters in the Invincible universe, Anissa. I wanted to do a comparison between, all of her scenes with Mark, with the comics, but I decided to do the whole episode because a lot happened. There were some changes to go along with the story that they've already set up, which non-comic book readers will not know, but this TV show has pulled, stories from further chapters, things that happened much later, and I've also done things differently and also expanded certain stories and gone different directions than the comics. So I'm just here to compare this episode and show you guys all the differences. Now the starting scene with Mark and Amber going to their Comic-Con and having fun, all those things are new scenes or new moments that I've created for the show. They are prolonging that Amber and Mark relationship. One new thing that they also did for this episode was breaking the fourth wall about animations and animating episodes of TV shows and fight scenes and how long it takes and all that. That was perfect. Kind of a little response to the fans, because of the break that they took and how they weren't finished with this second half of this season. It was a neat way to address that. Now a version of this does happen in the comics, but it doesn't happen at Comic-Con like Mark is with Amber. It was just at a comic book shop and he went alone, but it had a similar fourth wall break when it comes to writing comic books and releasing it weekly. So I like how they translated it from the comics to an animated TV show. And then we see Adam Eve call Mark, to go and help Rex because, he's out there trying to do shit when he's clearly suffering from some kind of PTSD, as we saw. This whole scene is new. And that fight that Rex has with that octopus monster is something that in the comics, Invincible actually fights. Rex was nowhere near that place. But I like how they, created this obstacle for Rex to pass, dealing with the things that he's dealt with in the past couple of, I don't know how long it's taking for him to, recover to do this. Now the bit with Amanda and Rudy is a little different in the comics compared to their entire relationship since it started. In the show, she's more frustrated and a little bit angry that Rex is trying to fix her and all that. But in the comics, even though she gets frustrated at times, she's still happy that he's trying to help her. And she's a lot more sad and a little bit scared of her aging backwards. A prime example is this scene where in the episode she gets frustrated at Rex and a little bit angry with things not going her way. We're controlling the robot, which also happens in the comics, but she relaxes a bit, even sheds some tears, and a little bit panicked and scared that she's going to lose Rudy. In the show, they've made Amanda more emotionally closed off, especially when it comes to Rudy in this second half of the season, which is the exact opposite in the comics. In the scene with Samson and Bulletproof, that whole conversation is also a new thing that they added. Now, Immortal retiring is the same in the comics, just that Cecil in the comics is a lot more, relaxed and kind of more friendlier to this, situation that he is in the show, where he's like not having it. It's like, this is temporary. You're going to come back. Even though he says it in the comics, he doesn't go any further and just lets Immortal go and gives back Rudy the leadership position. And that scene with Donald and Cecil, him also wanting to quit, that didn't happen in the comics, as well as him finding out about his past. Just this whole season of him going through this trauma, this PTSD of not actually knowing who he is. In the comics, he's always known about his cybernetic origins, his past and everything. So everything that is happening in the show is new. Now the scene with Rick, with his PTSD and trying to, off himself, is a scene that, they changed and went in a certain direction. In the comics, the conversation that they have is a bit similar to what, Donald has with him. But the only difference is that they have it inside, the Pentagon, where he's almost recovered. Unlike the show where, he's already recovered and he's back at school, but, he's really not himself. Now in the comics, he does have this breakdown, but it is not at this point in the story like in the show, and not in that location and that point where he's trying to off himself. That's why I talked about how certain stories are pulled from back and certain things are moved forward because of how they have structured this animated show. Now that scene with Mark and his mom having this, emotional conversation about Nolan is also something that is new in the show. And the scene with Mark and the Dean, which also happens in the comics, but they are totally different conversations, even though with the same topic. In the comics, the Dean doesn't actually know that Mark's, dad is dead, or that doesn't come up in their conversation, which in the show, he knows that Mark is going through his father's death and all that, but the topic of him, giving him a choice to actually stay in school is, the same in both medium. As well as that romantic montage, if I should call it that Mark and Amber has flying around and all that is something new in the show. I mean, it's not exactly new because in the comics, Mark does fly with Amber, but in different scenarios and situations, like visiting Eve in that her place. I tried to find a chapter, a panel where this sort of thing happened, but I couldn't find any. But anyways, one big change that they made was how they introduced Anissa, which she popped up when they were still on a date and threatened Mark to snap her neck if he doesn't follow her. In the comics, he was actually out with his mother and everything took place in the daytime. Their conversation is almost similar in the comics.
Didn't you hear me? I said I only wished to speak.
That hasn't been my experience with Viltrumites so far.
We have the technology to repair their climate, feed their hungry, punish their criminals. We will save more of their lives in a single year than you could in 100.
Them going to take down the Kaiju and their whole fight, which of course this episode was more extended, than the comics, which had, a couple of, few panels.
Thanks for the help.
You and the others listening to us are welcome. I see you care a great deal about this planet and its inhabitants.
It's kind of my thing.
But
I think you should go now.
remember that we started with reason. This is your last chance to show me you can learn.
Either you need me, or you don't. Make up your mind.
But soon, another will come. If he finds you still resistant to your destiny, he will demonstrate the error of your ways. I pray you come to your senses before then.
Another difference is that in the episode, they make it clear that Cecil, Donald, and the Pentagon, they are watching and listening to everything. But in the comics, we don't see none of that. We only see the encounter and the fight. And at the end, we see Cecil's men, come in to come and take care of the aftermath. In the episode, Cecil pops up, happy that Mark took a stand and tells him that his vacation days that he wants is over, which is a tease for what's next for Mark. Because in the comics, after this, Mark is put into some high intense training to get stronger. Let's move on to the breakup that everyone has been anticipating, waiting for, because it was something that was literally not going to stand the test of time. Sure, other superheroes have married or gone out with, normal people, and it has lasted for years. But in the world of Invincible, it's different. And with Mark, who is being constantly called all the time, it was never gonna last. He has to date someone who is in the same career, same thing, in the same position he is in. And that's why people have been shipping him and Adam Eve. And it is not even out of nowhere. They have been teasing that sort of thing since season 1. In the comics, they've been teasing it since the beginning. But they finally break up just like in the comics, but the circumstances are different. The show tried so hard to make it work, stretching it. It had to take her nearly dying before she realized, nah, this ain't for me. But in the comics, it was after Mark had gotten back from that whole secret space situation that we went through in episode 6. Which even before going, comics Amber was mad, she was furious that it was going, whilst TV show Amber was more understanding, even though she was a little sad. Now, after Mark got back, he saw her with Gary, who I think they introduced in the first season. And that is where Mark realized that she was going to be happy with another person, a normal guy like him. And they broke up mutually there, even though Mark was the one who initiated it. But in the show, it was much more emotional because they tried to really make it work, but it all went to shit. Now, spoilers, yeah, Mark is going to end up with Adam if the writing was on the wall. But the show has lessened, that tease that the comics had, for them ending up together. Like in the comics, like it was full on, when are they going to end up together, not if they are going to end up together. Now, the ending of the episode shows Enstrom Levy back on this earth and in Mark's house, holding his mom and brother hostage. Like, it's just the same in the comics. And oh boy, I can't wait for the translation of that whole sequence.
Well, I see. You failed to convince him.
General, he is poisoned, just like his father.
Now we move on to the post-credit scene where Alan encounters a Viltrumite ship, just like in the comics, fights with Anissa. But one thing that they did not elaborate more in the episode was him realizing and remembering Mark's words about his father being imprisoned, and as such pretending to get knocked out and dragged into that same ship where he thinks Nolan is, which the episode doesn't make that really clear. Now that's pretty much the comparison between episode 7 and the comics of Invincible. There are some things that I may have missed, but I'm pretty sure I got 99% of, what happens in the comics and the changes that they have made for the show and some of the similarities and things that they kept. I would have gone in depth more, but I'm sure there are other videos who have explained this about how, certain stories have been moved forward, certain things have been pushed back, certain things have also not been adapted, like certain characters that have been introduced in the comics but have yet to show up. So there are so many things that they have done to make, I think, the show better, because if you haven't read the comics, this easily is like an amazing show. If you've read the comics, you get to experience more, especially certain filler stories that are, good in my opinion. But anyways, do let me know in the comments below what you thought of this. I already have a video on what to expect this second half of the season, which most of my predictions were correct, but certain things that I also said were going to be teased for season 3 and onwards. And I even made a video way before that about what to expect in season 2. That was before season 2 came out, and some of the things I was way off. I just went in deeper, and those things are going to happen in season 3, season 4. So you can check those 2 videos out. And yeah, if you did enjoy this video, leave a like. It does help the video and the channel out. Subscribe and turn on that notification bell not to miss any new video as well. As always, Nadi Sage here. See you guys in the next one.